And that brings me to my introduction for Kasey Canlas. We're so grateful for her willingness to share her experience with us, with the Guild community today. Um, Kasey has been leading design and research operations for over 10 years. She has worked for McGraw Hill Education and more recently Genesys. She's also a member of the exclusive Cha-Cha Club started by Kate Towsey for research operations leaders. We're so grateful she's willing to share her experience with us, and it's now my pleasure to welcome Kasey.
Hello, it's nice to see everyone. I mean, not really see everyone because a lot of cameras are off, but if they were on, it'd be really nice to see you all. I will share my screen and I'm excited to be here. All right. So it's nice to be here. I'm going to be talking about road mapping research operations. If you're wondering who I am, I'm happy to tell you. I am Kasey Canlas. I'm a strategic research operations leader. I've built and led research operations for newly established UX teams twice now at an enterprise company. I have 12 plus years of operations experience at enterprise companies, and over the past 6+ years, it's been from the ground up, hit the ground running, see how you can make everything work. I've spearheaded digital transformation during COVID-19's rapid transition to remote work and education, and that was at an education company. So imagine everything that you know just all of a sudden goes to remote. It was kind of chaotic. I've successfully scaled our UX operations for 5 times the growth for a global UX team across 3 different continents. And I've partnered across data privacy, legal, customer success, PM, dev, marketing, IT, risk assessment, to identify opportunities and see where there might be areas we can streamline or optimize our existing workflows, because it's really a team event. It's not ever just an island that you're on. I do have a disclaimer. This presentation is intended for informational and educational purposes only. All views and opinions expressed are 100% my perspective as a research ops professional. I'm a little off the cuff. Who knows what I'll say? So I've got some topics today. We have identifying your landscape, following the money, starting the conversation, creating the roadmap, and updating as necessary. These are the 4 topics I'll be talking about. Or wait. These are the 5 topics I'll be talking about. Apologies. I did add a 5th one in because I was like, why not? It should be its own because I think it's important enough. Identifying your research ops landscape. So we're going to talk about looking across your landscape to see if it's well-maintained past or if it's going to be rocky, uninhabited terrain. So there's several different types of frameworks you'll see. There's one by Emma Bolton. Kate Towsey has one as well. This is one that I've just used to kind of separate out how we can contribute as research operations. And there's money and metrics. You're dealing with budgeting, forecasts, tracking metrics, tools and vendors, so evaluations, risk assessments, procurements. Insights is about curating and sharing the research knowledge you already have. Participants is a huge one that everybody always wants to know and get excited about. And like, we need to talk to people. So how can people be provided? So oftentimes when you see a startup research team, they're wanting participants. And how do you get access to participants? And how do you set up that pipeline? There's also ethics and privacy and governance. This is where legal teams and data privacy partnering comes in really handy. How do you empower your employees with research enablement or democratization? That's creating the necessary training and resources. And then active support for their systems, their tools, onboarding, so they know how to use everything that you've set up. One of the things I'll say is there's so many different areas and they all overlap. And so when you're looking across these different areas to see how mature they are, you want to focus on 2 to 3 max each quarter. And that's because if you try to do it all, it will not go so well. You will be super bummed out because it's just chaotic. There's no way you can do it all. So try to look and see across everything. What am I hearing from my research director or my head of UX research? What am I hearing from my designers that maybe use research or my PMs? and just talking to them to see what they would suggest. And then I also wanted to mention how to look at your different roadmaps. So if you're a new research team, if you're new research ops team, you're going to want to have quick wins and you're going to want to prove your worth right away. So looking at, okay, what can I establish really quickly to get some participants in here and to get it up, to get a bare bones experiment up and running so we can see, all right, we've got people in, we've got some research, where can I improve on this? And then you might need to start thinking more success and more long term as you get the resources, as you get more of a budget and you're more established. So then you should always be thinking about what are we wanting to move towards in 5 years' time, but that will solidify more as you become more mature. So what positions you may need, how you can adapt to changes, because everything's always going to change. That will never not be the way it goes. And then just never forgetting your long-term goal as you set up your short-term goals. They should always sort of move in the general direction of what you've established. And then as you're identifying your research operations landscape, it's important to look at the different methods for feedback. Maybe you have none of this set up, but maybe this is a great time to set it up for the future when you're looking at road mapping. Both our operations team and research team did monthly retros throughout the year where we talked about what were our successes, what were our challenges, what were our next steps. And we had state of the participant recruitment survey, which was quarterly. So we knew we were going to be doing a lot of participant recruitment. And we wanted to make sure that whatever we did, we were doing it in a positive way. And we could hear from our research team, or if it was something around democratized team or democratized research, we could hear from our design team. Do I need to slow down, guys? I feel like I'm going fast. Yes. Ray's giving me a half thumbs up, so I'm going to take that as a yes. We also had planned a state of UX research yearly survey. We didn't get to release that last year because we kept going back and forth on what we wanted to have in it. But it's really nice to have these different surveys and these different ways of connecting with your team, of connecting with your stakeholders, because then you can see where the improvement is. You can kind of create metrics. We used a CSAT as well for our stakeholders. So we would send out a CSAT survey to see how they found the research. Was it actionable? Were they able to do something and have some recommendations that they followed out of that to kind of follow up on their research? And on all of the surveys, we made sure that we left an open text field, because if you have a rate this 1 to 5, there's always going to be something in there that won't be covered. And it's nice to see if they can say why they put the 1 to 5 and what was behind that. And then also seeing if there's any inaccuracies, you can follow up and see more about that. Also, looking at everything that we had from this, looking at all of the retros and seeing how often did we hear about participant recruitment? We heard about it a lot. So that's always going to be a high indicator that we need to have that on our roadmap next year to improve. And then following the money. So there are many paths, and often some are two-way streets. I bet you're not thinking that from following the money, I'm going to go straight into Lord of the Rings, but I am. Partially because I paid $20 for a copyright photo of Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, and I don't plan on it going to waste. So, Lord of the Rings, you may be familiar, you may not. I've talked to my parents before and they've nodded along as I'm like explaining analogies. I've done it with data privacy and PII, and that was really exciting for me, not so exciting for them, but they got the gist. All that to say, we have the Fellowship of the Ring. It's created to protect the One Ring while it's on its trip to Mordor. This is a whole group of everyone that gets together. The whole reason for the trip to Mordor is they want to throw the ring back into the fires where it was initially forged, and they want to destroy it. And in this story, there's 4 small hobbits that rely on the members of the Fellowship to accomplish their goal. And had they not partnered together, the entire world would have been plunged into darkness, and evil would have won. So it's important that we have our Fellowship and that we kind of keep in contact with them and see what they're doing and make sure that we're traveling all in the same road. The reason I say that, after I drink a water, 1 second. All right. The reason I say that is because it's all the same goal. Oftentimes when we're thinking about how we want to set up our goals, we're thinking about, okay, let's talk to our research stakeholders. Let's talk to our UX stakeholders. Maybe let's talk to our PM stakeholders, but we're not actually going far enough and thinking about how does this apply to the business? And so it's very important that, just like Lord of the Rings, at the end of the day, we all want to contribute to the same goal. It may be through different means. So it's important to partner with the business to make sure you have the quickest way to success. Because at the end of the day, as much as everybody says everything matters and users matter, they do. But if you don't have any customers, you won't have a company to work for. So let's say we have a business goal and it's sell more Hawaiian pizza. The PMs would have a goal that's like, we're going to reduce cart abandonment, and it's going to be 15% for any Hawaiian pizza orders. And then you'll have research who will say, okay, we'll take that goal and we'll study the customer reviews. We'll understand the pain points and we'll see what the current Hawaiian pizza experience looks like. So what would your operational goals look like? Maybe it's a centralized repository of all of the Hawaiian pizza research findings you have that you want to make accessible. Maybe you're going to pull that out and make sure that that's like the first thing when people log onto your repository to see. Maybe you're just going to compile it because you don't have a repository and you're just going to share it out to important stakeholders and see if they can share it out with theirs. Whatever level it is, it's just thinking about how it applies. Maybe it's participant recruitment. You know that your pipeline is not set up for Hawaiian pizza lovers. You don't have pizza enthusiasts. You don't have pizza skeptics, and now this is going to be where your business is moving towards. So you want to make sure that you think about that when you're building your roadmap. Maybe it's training your non-research team members on how to interpret Hawaiian pizza research data. It's just thinking that whatever you make sure that you've planned is within your scope, but is also contributing to the larger goal. Are we still all with me? Yes, I hope so. All right. Next, we're going to start the conversation. And there's no birds, there's no bees. It's not that conversation. We're just talking about priorities. So no one should be scared here. It's very important to talk to your stakeholders. You've looked at maybe their goals that they've released. You've looked at the business goals. As you've seen what might align with your goals, this is where you can dig into that. This is where you can dig into, oh, I see that we have legal and data privacy, and we're wanting to work on informed consent documents. How busy are you with the legal team? How busy are you with the data privacy team? Is it going to be months, or is it going to be, maybe you could fit it in a couple of weeks? It's important to see what dependencies you have on other teams and where there might be alignment, because that will affect your roadmap as well. So how often have we seen something where we've said, hey, who do you want to talk to? And we've tried to start up our participants at a company, and we're trying to figure out who is our desired participants to recruit. When you ask, who do you want to talk to? Can you guess what the answer is that you often hear? The initial answer is customers. And this is one of my favorite words because it's used all the time across many different companies and it has different meanings for every person. The reason I say this is because it's important to clarify that you're on the same page. When someone says customer, they may be thinking of a business and their employees, or they may be thinking of just users who use our software. To sales, customer is somebody who's paying the money, writing the checks. To marketing, a customer could be that end user that's seeing. It depends on if you're B2B, if you're B2C. And then once they say, oh, we're looking for a user, are we talking about customer service reps? Are we talking about engineers? This goes on and on until you find out what you're actually looking for. The reason I say this is because it's important when you're having conversations with your stakeholders that you find out when they say something, what it means, because that could also set you on a completely different path. If you are talking about customers and they're talking about engineers and you're thinking customer service reps, we're already misaligned. And then just to bring it back to Lord of the Rings one last time, There's a quote, you step on the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to. So know what you're wanting to talk to them about with what their goals say and how it aligns with you, and then also know what they are asking you. Know what questions they say, know what customer means. And then we're going to create the roadmap. This is the time. It's very important that you have, move this around. You have sorry, let me restart. It's very important. The first thing that you do when you're looking across your entire roadmap is see what has a deadline. Is there something that you need to finish by Q1? Say you have this big hiring break that's in Q4. You're going to want to make sure that any enablement materials, any democratization materials you have are done sooner than that, because then you're going to have to retrain everybody as you've made all of these changes. Making sure that if it has a deadline, you're putting enough time in there. You're making sure that you're giving yourself enough space to complete that within the deadline. If there's something that's a budget related item, so maybe this is training, maybe this is you have a risk assessment and tools. I know that when we did risk assessments, it was always 3 months. So anytime that I wanted to plan a tool, if I'd say the deadline is in June, I know that I would have to at least start working on it by, this is where I should have chose something that wasn't June, 3 months before that, because then we're not going to have we're not going to have it ready in time. And that's still giving yourself time, but also knowing that you have a dependency on somebody else, so that could make it later. And that, speaking in dependencies, it's very important to see when you look across all of your research ops work, when you're going to be dependent on others. Most of the time with research ops, we do work with a lot of different stakeholders. We work with a lot of different companies. And so you want to put in some wiggle room after you've had conversations with people to say, this is dependent on this person. It may not happen at this time, depending on what happens. I had a project last year that I worked on, and one team was so swamped that it was 6 months before they could even get to my project. It wasn't that my project wasn't important. It was that there was another company initiative that was happening at the same time. So taking that into consideration. And then also, as you're building out a roadmap, it's important to keep space in there for housekeeping and tracking and metrics and measurement, because you need to create tracking systems to measure in order to know that you were successful. I mentioned that CSAT survey that we send out to stakeholders after every research effort. I mentioned the state of UX research. And I mentioned the other survey about participant recruitment. You're going to want to have time built in there to review everything that you have and look at everything and compile it and then share it out. Because if you don't have that time, it's constantly going to get pushed back because you have more active work that will always come in. And then there is continuous improvements. So across your entire research ops org, you're going to have created stuff that is okay. It's doing the job, but it's not great. And if you have something that can be worked on in your downtime, that's where you put in some continuous improvements. You're not going to have a specific time for it, but you might say this quarter, Q1, we'll work on this in our spare time if everything goes smoothly, if everything works. And it's just giving yourself that time to make the improvements as you have the time. And then throwing out wiggle room. This is really important. Often, I will tell you that this was my biggest mistake my first year that I did a roadmap, and I was like, I'll get it done, no problem. I forgot about dependencies. I forgot about the fact that maybe our entire business would change and go to COVID-19. And then now we have to stop and we have to go, all right, we were having them sign printed consent forms. Now it needs to be digital. All right, how are we going to set up a remote research lab that we can have everyone talk back and forth and conduct research? And there was so much to think about that anything else I had on that roadmap got pushed farther and farther back because there was so much stuff that was, I need to do it now. I need to improve it now. So had I scheduled that wiggle room, it would have helped. I say all this to say, when you schedule, make your upcoming quarter be your most finalized, and then your other quarters, just think of them as a best guess. You're going to try to get it done at that time, but it depends on what else happens when you have your research ops. You don't know what changes are going to come down the road. You don't know what additional factors you may have to think about. So making sure that you save that time for the unexpected. And then updating as necessary. It's very important to look back at your roadmap I think we did it every 3 months because quarterly, 4 months, 3 months, every 3 months quarterly, because it was important to see what did we not end up taking on? What did we end up pushing back? What was deprioritized because these additional projects, these additional initiatives came in and ended up taking away that space. It's also important that as you are documenting this, you take the time to measure what went successfully and reflect on what you did well. And then you share out what you've accomplished because you want to get the recognition that you are making these improvements, you are seeing that growth happen. And then you want to learn from what you didn't accomplish. Why didn't you accomplish it? Was it something that was in your control? Was it poor planning? Was it outside factors? Is there somebody that you had a dependency on and they didn't provide the required resources in time? It's important to look at that and then try to plan for it the next time. You're not going to be able to plan for everything, but you would be amazed at how much you learn by looking back and seeing how much your roadmap changed over just a quarter. So finalizing those quarters as you go. So what can you do? Identify your landscape, follow the money, start the conversation, create the roadmap, and then make sure you update it as necessary. And then I wanted to just say, there is no one size fits all approach. I've shown stuff here and maybe it has not looked like the right org structure of yours. Maybe you have research that sits underneath a different org that's not UX. Their goals might be different, their org structure might be different, but in general, the same factors apply. It's talking to your stakeholders. It's making sure that you know where your maturity lies and how you can create that wiggle room and create a roadmap that will set you up for success, because you don't want to have something that you've said you'll deliver all of this on and then you don't, because it was just all jam-packed in there and you had hopeful thinking and then your hopes die on the mat. So yes, that is all of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kasey. Awesome overview. You've inspired a number of questions from the audience. So let's go through some of them, and if other questions come up, feel free to post them in the chat, or we may even be able to let you raise your hands and ask questions directly. So here's the first. Dammy asks, or Damie, can you speak more on the monthly retros? Who was involved? How did you action learnings? How did
Yeah.
it go?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. We had our monthly retro was with our UX research team and research operations. And when we were creating this, we actually would tweak it every couple of months because we go, do we really like how we set up this? We did rosebud thorn, and then we were like, nah, that doesn't seem to jive with our team. So what we would say is we'd have 3 different columns, and it'd be like, what are your challenges? What are your successes? And we'd go through those and have, I think it was 5 minutes each, where everybody wrote on Post-its and put all of their stuff in. And then they would cluster for the next couple of minutes. So you'd have these different clusters, and everybody enjoyed creating the fun little names of the clusters because why not? We're researchers. And then it was interesting to look and see what our successes were and where people were struggling. And then we would vote on the top challenges. So say there were like 15 votes for this one challenge, we would talk that through as a team, and then that would be what's on the next steps. So we would say, okay, it looks like we're having a lot of issues with not having enough information on this project. We're going to try to implement like a check-in with research earlier, so then we have kind of a heads up on when that project will come in versus just getting called in last minute. So it's trying to action the different challenges that we heard if it were actionable. If not, then it was something that we would discuss in the management and leadership meetings where we're seeing these different post-its about whatever it may be, process as culture, and just letting them see if there was any similar issues, similar conversation around the different items. Did I answer everything? There was like 3 different questions in there.
I think you did a good job. They can ask a follow-up if they'd like to. Peter, that's kind of a related question. How often do you review the roadmap informally with stakeholders, and how often do you publish a new official version?
That's a great question. With stakeholders, we actually, so we had a close-knit relationship with PM Ops, like PM Operations. They had their own operations team. It grew quite successfully during the time I was there. I was there for almost 4 years, and they went from like a team of 3 or 4 to like a team of 15. And so the amount of stuff that they would accomplish was amazing. But we would meet monthly with them to see how they were progressing on their different goals and if there was anything that aligned with us or if there was anything we could both see that we could help on. Because oftentimes, if PM was working towards something, well, research is also attached to a lot of those PM tickets. And if there's something happening in the workflow that might be an issue, then maybe we can adjust the process so it fits better for both of us. Yeah.
Marion asks, curious what tool you use for your ReOps roadmap. I'd love to see a visual if you're willing to share.
I can't share it now because I'd probably have to redact certain things. But I used Miro. So there's 2 different ways that we did it. We used Miro when we were planning. As research operations, we'd kind of start out with post-its and we'd take all of our stuff from the different surveys, the demos. We'd just pull that all into Miro. We'd start sorting it out and seeing what kind of themes were coming out of it. And then we would create our roadmap that was kind of like, how do you think? How does this look to you? And then we would take that to our head of research, our head of UX, and to our PM stakeholder and say, like, here's what we're planning. I'd also look at what their PM goals were because they did a weekly conversation, and then every quarter, I believe, they would update on what their goals were, how they were producing towards it. And then we could kind of see if things had been pulled off of the roadmap, if things were added to it, and then we could adjust and pivot. Because the reason it was so important to be aligned with PM is often where the money is, the features are. If you look at the different ratios, there's always a lot more PMs than there are designers and researchers. And I mean, engineering also has a lot, but PM is a nice one to align to because they are the ones that are trying to deliver and they're the ones that get a lot of the influence and the eyes on them. So if you can align with them, that also helps with your visibility and they'll advocate for you more.
Okay, Casey, the questions are coming in faster than we can answer them.
Oh no.
Um, or Jocelyn asks, any additional suggestions for research ops roadmaps in smaller orgs without dedicated ops teams?
Yeah. Um, so when you're talking, this is where I would like to know more. I would like to know more. Is Jocelyn here? Can she speak?
Jocelyn, come off mute and tell us
Jocelyn, are
more.
you with us?
Hello, I don't know if you can hear me. I have a bad mic.
Yes, we can.
What did you like to know?
So you mentioned roadmaps for a small org. You still should have you still should have stakeholders, I would think, like across
Mhm.
the company. Um, can you give me more?
Well, so we have a UX team, but we don't have any, like currently the sole user researcher.
Mhm.
And we don't have anyone specifically doing ops. So, but a lot of the stuff I'm doing really aligns with what you're talking about. It is kind of ops stuff because we're looking at enabling everyone to do research, right? Because that's the way to grow. There's just not like more budget is not an option at this
Yeah.
point organizationally. So yeah, I think a lot of what you're saying really makes sense. And I just wondered, yeah, if you had any additional sort of thoughts when it's kind of like my job, but not my job, if you know what I mean.
I 100% know what you mean. I
Can't do the
actually started
research
out,
without the ops, but the ops isn't like nobody,
nobody wants
not
to
what
do.
anyone considers as the job, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I actually started out in design operations and we didn't even have a design ops team when I started. I would just get frustrated by the different stuff that was very admin. And I was like, I can't handle this going so slow. I'm going to create a template and I'm going to figure out a way I can copy and paste this that'll format it for me. So I unintentionally started getting into operations without realizing it. And so when they created a research team, I think they were a team of 4 when I started and it was new. Like the whole previous team had left, and so then there was a new team. And so I was the only research ops person. And at the time, there wasn't really any knowledge of what research ops was. And so they kind of said, figure it out, and then we'll see how it goes from there. Our biggest issue from the get-go when we were looking at roadmaps was participant recruitment. Like we had Excel sheets across the company. I mean, many different Excel sheets, many different formats, no real understanding of what they did. So it was really talking to the different, like I'd talk to PMs. If you know anybody that you're friendly with across different areas, I know that when I was in a bigger org, there's just too many people. There's sometimes you can't even find the right person to connect with. And so what you do is you go to maybe a designer or you go to whoever you're friendly with and say, "Hey, have you talked to anybody on the PMs that would be open to a chat with me to find out how things work on their end?" And then that kind of leads to another conversation and another conversation, and you soon end up finding the right person. But I used a lot of conversations with salespeople, for example, to talk about who their customers were, what they were trying to accomplish with their customers. So then I could also help see how to segment my participants. So that was something that was really important. So then when we created like a participant recruitment program, we knew that, okay, we need to try to segment them into these different areas. And for example, as teachers, so who's a rural teacher? Who's a suburban teacher? If this is a student, is it K-5? Are we looking at middle school or 9-12? What type of extracurriculars do they have? What's something unique? So I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of validates actually that I'm on the right track. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Because yeah,
And
definitely the participant thing is a big thing for us, and we're actually putting together a community of folks so that we can actually improve our ease of recruitment, especially for some of the smaller questions that we don't answer very well right now. So.
also throwing out, because I didn't say this in the presentation, but I think it's very important to say, as research operations, you're not just everything is on you. If it is, you're going to be a silo. It's very important to figure out how to enable everyone to do the work that needs to be done. So you're one person, but I can tell you that we only had 4 researchers on our team. What we ended up doing was we did democratize. I think we went from 4 people to 87 different people that were researching. And how we did that was we started out by saying like, does anybody want to try to research? Like before I was even on the research team, I saw hey, we need somebody to interview or take notes. And so I went and took notes for several different interviews and I'd get free supper. It was amazing. And then there were like once you took notes so many times, you'd be in the analysis and synthesis and the researcher would walk you through it. And then maybe you would learn how to moderate. And once we felt comfortable with it, then you could moderate to others. So it's about saying, what tasks are really important for me as the researcher to do, and what else can I have somebody help with? Because you have project teams, it's important for them to be watching the research as well, and it's important for them to be taking the notes and participating in your analysis and synthesis. So don't think it's all on you. Like you can have help, and whoever your management direct line is, talk to them about how much more you can get done if you can help bring people in and enable them and upskill them.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a good approach. And I really, yeah, I guess what drew me to this is making that roadmap explicit so everyone can kind of see what the plan is, right? Like how we want to move towards that enablement. So yeah.
And keeping track of when things go off the rails. I've had some stuff that has went over its time frame and over its time frame, like just because the scope changed, just because, oh, we're looking for this type of participant, or we're planning on doing this specific thing. And then it's like, oh, wait, here's another 5 other options, and we're looking at switching the direction. Make sure you take track, like take note of that, because then if somebody comes to you later on and says, it ended up taking 3 extra months, why is that? It's because the entire project changed. And here's when all of that happened in the discussions. Like that's important to note too, because it's a good way of providing, we want to not have this happen again in the future. Like we want to note that we did see that the scope changed and it wasn't the same project as what was asked. That's why it took longer.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Thank you,
welcome.
Cassie. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Okay, Kasey, we have a slightly related question that came up on building a panel. Anna asks, curious if you have tips for building a research panel for B2B research. Panels like user interviews, respondent don't have enough for my population.
100% understand. I had 3 months when I first started at Genesys to build the participant panel, and it was a chaotic 3 months because I went in there like, yeah, I'll build it. It'll be great. It was a lot of talking to the CSMs. I believe I mentioned I talked to the sales, the customer success reps. I found some that had worked previously with design or had been friendly with different design. Um, and I went and talked to them, and then they referenced me to other CSMs. And it was about saying, hey, if I set up a participant panel, would your customers be interested in participating in research? We'll give them free stuff. We'll listen to their opinions and they'll get to make a difference in our products. And it's about like changing what you're asking of them and making it appealing to them. So it's not just about you getting the research participants, but you're saying, I can help you with your customers. Have, I can have, I can have them have an opportunity to explain what they go through and what their experiences are and talk to an actual person who will then make a difference. Um, we had the first way we did it was I was not overseas, like I don't live overseas, and so there was GDPR. I knew that we would need to hire somebody that was located in one of the one of the EU areas. And so that hire would take a year. So in that time, we had to make do with what we had, and that was we would send out a request to the CSMs who would talk to the companies and then have the companies send it out to their different employees. It wasn't ideal, but it still was able to provide us with enough participants to make the subjects work. And it helped if we could get a heads up before we did the actual research. So then we could say, we're going to have these upcoming studies, and we know that we're going to need a customer service rep, or we know we're going to need someone who does the back office work. So just thinking about what possible target audiences you have, and then making those connections with your CSMs, or making those connections with, if you have a customer advocacy group, they might have people. Don't think of it as B2B, think of it as B2B2C, because really you're still in the end trying to get to your individual. It's just you might have to have the business refer them to you. They still have to sign up. You can't just volunteer them through the business.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Hatsunuki asks, well, first of all, says, thanks, Kasey. You spoke about building wiggle room for dependencies. How do you advocate for that time buffer with leadership or PMs who might push for faster delivery?
That's always a question, isn't it? It always has to be faster. Um, I think that it's really important in that case to look at what the risk might be of if you get it wrong. If you don't have this additional time, what will this cost us? And are they willing to take that risk and that potential initiative not happening? Or because often we would see where PMs would want to move faster and faster, but maybe they didn't have their criteria. I spoke about scope changing. That was something really big on our participant recruitment where they're looking for one thing and they say one thing, but then they change their mind a couple of weeks later and they're actually looking for something else. Well, that's 2 weeks of recruitment that's now down the drain. And that's 2 weeks of research that you've already figured out. Here's my plan. Here's what we're going to ask. Here's what we're targeting. And you have to start over. So it's saying, okay, we can switch. Ugh. Sorry, this is where I need to drink water all the time. We can switch our scope, but it's going to cost this, this, and this, and just letting them know that and letting whoever your direct manager is, so everyone's aware that I would love for this to happen. I would love to, on a dime, spend and get it all done fast, but say I do it fast and then it changes. That's all wasted time. So it really wasn't fast at all.
Okay, great point. Lily asks, do you have advice for creating and or choosing KPIs to measure progress and success of research programs, certain objectives?
Ooh, it's a great question. I'm actually working on, so I haven't, this is still starting days, but I'm working on creating a list of KPIs. And then I also have a maturity matrix I'm creating that I've used in the past, but trying to make it more holistic because it's oftentimes not just the small things that you have. It's how you're leveling them up. Can you repeat the question? It's all gone. It's all gone.
Do you have advice for creating and or choosing KPIs to measure research progress and success?
I am going to open up my books. I'm not going to show you all my books because then there would be judgment. But if I can get my books to come up, then I can remember who did it. There's a couple of really good books that I would say are worth their weight in gold. I don't know how much they weigh because they're on my Kindle, but I imagine they are worth their weight in gold. There is one of the things that's amazing is Research That Scales. It's by Kate Towsey. She just wrote it a few months ago. When we talk about like gold medal, she should have gotten platinum. It goes through every different type of research question you could have. She talks about KPIs in it. She's phenomenal. There's also one called Who Does What by How Much, and it's by Jeff Gothleff. I can type it into the chat or but that one's a really good one. And then Outcomes Over Output with Josh Seiden, Seiden. Those two have been phenomenal. They really make you think about things in a different way. And it's often not just looking at it as like these are research KPIs, but going, how would this relate to the business? How am I actually trying to, just like the pizza example, how is what I do contributing to the overall good of the business? I hope that helps. But those are very good books that I love.
That's awesome. Okay, well, you kind of started to touch on this in your last question. Brian asks, what level of information do you share with the C-suite?
That's a great question because I'll be honest with you, I have no clue what level of information went to the C-suite. You can create dashboards, you can create things, but then there's also other additional layers that they have to go to. Um, there's I would say like one of the things that our information that went to the C-suite about was we wanted to make sure here's how much of our research that we're doing that's related to these specific initiatives that we have as a company. So maybe there's these two focus areas and we're relating our research to it. One of my big initiatives my last year was working on data and improving our data integrity. and making sure it was complete and linked up to our PM initiatives and showing that like here's out of all of our research that we've done, here's the percentage of research that we've done focused on these business initiatives and showing how it's improving. And then for democratization, as it's such a big word now, it's such a big push and drive, we showed here's how much work that we're doing that's more evaluative. I don't know. You know the word I mean. Here's how much is evaluative versus here's how much is more like that generative exploratory research. And we were showing that we were democratizing more of that evaluative research, and we were working on more of the harder exploratory that required that research expertise. And so as we show that, that's also our impact that's growing because we're able to see more of what we're doing going across the entire org.
Okay, see feel free to take a drink here. While I
Mhm.
read the next, while I queue up the next question.
Thank you. I hope you edit out all of these times I've drank and every time I've mentioned I need a drink. Solid 15 minutes.
We've got a great editing team. AP asks, well, first of all, thanks a lot for the talk. And then asks, did you have any issues with qualitative research after democratizing research?
This is where I will say you have to have some grace. You have to have some grace and know that no one's going to be perfect from the get-go. No one's ever perfect from the get-go. And there's maybe not going to be the best research of all time as you're democratizing it, but I would hope that you weren't giving somebody research that's super, super important. It's still something that needs to be solved. It's still something that needs to be done, but anything that's very important that needs that accuracy, maybe not. Just know that it will take time. It'll take time for everyone to learn. It takes time for all of us to learn what we're doing and how to adjust as things change. So, yeah, when it came to quantitative, it's easy enough. But when it comes to qualitative, it's always subjective. Even us as researchers, when we look through it, I'm not a researcher, but like I research the researchers. So as a researcher, you notice that it's not always going to be perfect, and that's okay. But just knowing that, is there improvement over time? Are you seeing that the insights that they're pulling out are more accurate than what they were when they initially started? Are you seeing that the notes that they take are more accurate than what it was before? Somebody's saying something on Monday. But yeah, just when it's qualitative. Qualitative? Yeah, when it's qualitative, it's very hard to measure that anyways. And so oftentimes is it improving? Are we able to get more research done? Did we find some good insights out of everything versus no insights? Or would we have even been able to do this project if we hadn't democratized?
Okay, great answer, great issues. And I like your strategy of dividing up the more critical research to the research team and more evaluative to the people who do research. Here's another question. What suggestions do you have for increasing visibility of the research roadmap to everyone across the org, from C-suite to ICs?
Do you have a do you have like a all distribution list?
Okay, well, I think
No, I'm just saying like that is something you could technically do. We're going to adjust. Yeah, one of the things I would say is it comes through that partnerships, and as you're talking to people and as you are making those connections, you don't just make connections to ask them for something. You're making connections because in the future you might need their help. They might need your help, and you want to have that bridge built before you go over it. And certainly you don't want to burn bridges. Try to avoid that. But yeah, I would say it's really about socializing. And with PM Ops, we were able to talk to them. We were able to know them as people and know what their end goal is. And then when we would try to say, you know what, research has been not brought in on certain things. Maybe it's something that's a process change. And if you can suggest that solution, if it's easy enough to implement, then they're probably going to be like, yes, great. We just didn't have enough time to think about research and how we would implement it into the end-to-end process. So just finding common goals and setting up your conversations and then saying, hey, here's our roadmap. And then maybe they'll be the ones that reach out to you for the conversation when they're like, hey, this seems to align with something of ours. As I said, it's a two-way street. It's not always just you reaching out. It does come back to you in spades.
Ashley asks, when were you able to get your first role as research operations specialist and be able to use the skills discussed today? And what was your role prior to moving into that role?
That's a great question. So I have lived a life. Um, I would say I've been in research operations 6 years. Before that, I was doing design operations as like a side job when I was doing like media project coordination. Um, Prior to that, I was doing like I was telling people how to set up shots of photos in the Kroger ads. But the thing that I can say is just because you've not had a title that says research operations doesn't mean that you don't have skills that carry over. When I was in my proofreading job, when I was in my librarian job and learning about tagging and learning about how to categorize things, like that may be under a different field. It wasn't when I was a research operations specialist, but it still counts. It still applies towards what we're working on. When I did research operations and I moved into it as a specialist, there was me and one other like part-timer, and she was amazing at some things and I was amazing at some things. And so it was really like we'd get together and be like, all right, what are we tackling? And normally it'd be one of us that was doing active recruitment while the other one was trying to improve things, and then we would switch on and off. When it comes to road mapping, there's always going to be different levels of maturity. So even if you're just putting down like your best guesses on a piece of paper for like the next quarter and then revisiting it, it's better than nothing. It's still road mapping, regardless of whether it's polished. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be accurate 100% either. As I said, like the wiggle room, that's from learning that things will not go as you hope. Things will never go as you hope. But you'll have some successes and you'll have some failures and you'll learn from that. And then you'll go, I won't do that again, but it's important to own up to it. So maybe I've answered the question.
I think you did. I think we have time for one final question. It comes from Peter. In taking on the responsibility for the research ops roadmap, have you ever experienced that the people around you felt you were taking away some of their responsibilities? For example, for the research process, choosing tools, measuring success, etc.
I'm so glad you asked this question because I realized I forgot something that I really wanted to say. Um, and now I'm saying it at the last minute. It's important to bring everyone along when you're working on research operations. You are not creating all of these process changes in a silo. What I would do oftentimes is I would pick out different people, or I would ask the research managers, like, who's some researchers that'll have some open time coming up in the next XYZ, or this person really has messaged me and said that they're driven insane by the scheduling software and they can't find this template and this isn't going right. They're the perfect person for me to work with and have them come with me through the process and like test things and see if it works, because they're already frustrated by it. So they'll be super excited that it's fixed. And I would try to look at the different types of people. You'll have some people that want details. They want everything down to the wire. They're like, I just need perfection. And then there's other people that are like, I want to do the bare minimum to get my job done and move on. And it's important to show it to both of those types of people. So, I'm not asking too much and I'm not asking too little. Like it'll still serve for everyone. It's the Goldilocks. And then it's also important as you're going through everything to make sure you check in with them and explain like they did do good and tell their managers they helped me on this and they were really they deserve recognition for it. We had a company recognition thing where if someone helped us with creating assets, we would make sure that we recognize them for it. If somebody took their time out of their day to help me figure out a different screening recruitment survey, then that's still helping. So really acknowledging and recognizing those people that do help you out, because then they're more likely to help you out too. And if they have some ownership and they have some piece of the pie as you're creating it, they're less likely to resist, and they're also more likely to advocate for you. Same with design. We had a designer help us with research, like with one of our research programs. And then that designer talked to the other designers in one of our all hands about, here's how this helped me. Here's how we went through the research process. And so it's coming from inside, if you will. It's like you have an inside contact that can speak their language and they trust, versus it's coming from you who's an outsider. So really making sure that you just bring them along and not just force stuff out, and making sure to say, this might not be perfect. If it's wrong, if it doesn't seem to be right with you, talk to me. Like, let me know and we'll fix it. Everybody that I work with know that they can come to me with any problem and say, this isn't working out for me, and we'll try to figure it out. It's not just because I've released this is final and it's perfect, because it's never going to be. It's going to be changed and updated over and over again. And I want them to have a good experience.
Awesome. Awesome. Kasey, thank you so much for sharing your experience with our group
Thank
today.
you for having me, Raymond. I appreciate it. And thank you, Jess.
You've got such a depth. I want to turn it over to Jess. Jess, will you announce our book winner for the day?
Yes, today our book from Debbie Levitt goes to Rosie Mendelson. We will get in touch with you, Rosie. We've got your email address, so we'll follow up on how to get it to you.
Thank you to Rosie and for everyone who submitted such great questions today. That really helped draw out different aspects. So we really appreciate that. Well, thanks to everyone who came. We are a bit over time, so we apologize. But wow, you had so much to share, Kasey, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.